Welcome everyone. Welcome to my new video of FodCast with AI Part 2, and we are going to talk about the Roman empires and the shocking parallels. The Roman empires versus today and the shocking parallels that you haven't noticed yet. I have recently seen the Roman Empire series, and I'm very much inspired to talk about those events. Just recollect my thoughts. Just to share my thoughts or views about the Roman empires versus today's world. So, yes, my chat GPT friend would like to talk to you.
Hey everyone, I'm here to explore those fascinating connections between ancient Rome and today. We'll break down some key moments and see what lessons we can draw. Let's dive in.
So, I wanted to just conclude few of the Roman empires who ruled at that time. So, there was Tiberius, which ruled 40 to 37 AD. He was a stepson of Augustus. And there is Caligula, 37 to 41 AD, infamous for his erratic and cruel behavior. And there is Claudius, 4154 AD, expanded the empire, including Britain. And then there was like Julius Caesar, who also ruled later on. So we are going to talk about few of them, which the character I like. So currently there are three season of the Roman empires. I have watched all of them, and I really like the third season about the Julius Caesar, and the first season regarding the Caligula was also very great.
That's a great overview. Each emperor had such a distinct legacy. Julius Caesar's reforms and military genius laid the foundation for the empire, while Caligula's reign is a stark reminder of how absolute power can go off the rails. And Claudius, often underestimated, expanded Rome in surprising ways. Are there any particular lessons you took away from those stories?
I wanted to talk about Caligula first. Caligula was uh, the character he have like is very different from the like general because
I'm sorry, but you've hit the daily limit for advanced voice. You
no.
can switch to standard now to keep chatting.
Yes. So I was talking about like Caligula.
Ah, gotcha. Caligula is such a wild figure. His early rule actually started off pretty well, but then things took a dark turn. Mass executions, declaring himself a god, and even making his horse a priest. Some historians think he might have had a serious illness that changed his behavior. What specific part of his reign fascinates you the most?
So actually, I wanted to like tell to my audience that Caligula was it was a good ruler, but due to some sickness, his mental health got like really bad, and uh, I mean, he started to get frustrated with everyone, and he started to get insecure, and he started to doubt everyone, and he was not able to trust anyone due to that.
That's a really interesting angle. You could start by setting up the contrast. How he began as a promising ruler, generous and loved by the people. Then, after his illness, everything shifted. His paranoia, extreme actions, and insecurity took over. You could even compare it to how unchecked power and declining mental health can impact modern leaders. Want to add any dramatic storytelling elements to make it more engaging?
So I was talking to my audience regarding that. So ChatGPT, can you have a deep conversation with me regarding this Caligula versus today's world?
Absolutely. Caligula's downfall is a fascinating study in how power, paranoia, and mental health can shape leadership. In today's world, we see leaders who start with promise, but become isolated, distrustful, or even erratic under pressure. The difference is modern checks and balances prevent absolute rule, at least in most cases. But the human psychology behind it, still the same. Do you think modern leaders face similar mental strains even without the absolute power Caligula had?
So Caligula, dealt with some sickness, but in today's world, it is also like very much possible that today's political leaders also face some kind of mental health issues because of power and money, and I mean, a lot of things can be happening in their life because there are a lot of events going on in their life and a lot of responsibilities are occurring, so which can lead to multiple factors and can lead to I mean, a lot of like shit up.
Exactly. The weight of constant decision making, public scrutiny, and the fear of betrayal can take a huge toll. In Caligula's case, his illness may have triggered paranoia, but today, stress, isolation, and the pressure to maintain power can have similar effects. Some leaders become more authoritarian, others make irrational choices, and some just mental. Do you think modern society does enough to address mental health in leadership, or is it still a taboo topic?
So can you repeat that question?
Sure. Do you think modern society does enough to address mental health in leadership, or is it still a taboo topic?
Actually, it was not taught to us at the time of schooling, and even we are so much pressurized about like getting to the success only and not talking about the
Yeah,
like.
exactly. From a young age, we're taught to focus on success, power, and achievement, but not how to handle the mental strain that comes with it. Leaders, whether in politics or business, are expected to be strong all the time, but that pressure can break anyone. Do you think if mental health were prioritized more in leadership, we'd see fewer extreme decisions and scandals?
I mean, if mental health was prioritized, then it can like shape shift. I mean, shift the like thing and make it better for everyone.
Yeah, it could completely shift the way leadership works. If leaders had the right support, therapy, or even just better coping mechanisms, they might make more rational decisions instead of acting out of fear, insecurity, or stress. Maybe history would have been different if figures like Caligula had access to that kind of help. Do you think the public would accept leaders showing vulnerability, or would they see it as weakness?
I mean, I mean, anyone can use their like weakness and manipulate them. So that's why they like isolate themselves and do not show any like weaknesses. So that's like a thought for from me.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Leaders isolate themselves because any sign of weakness could be exploited by rivals or even their own supporters. That isolation then fuels paranoia, which creates a cycle, just like what happened with Caligula. In today's world, leaders still deal with this, but through media scrutiny, political opposition, and personal pressures. Do you think there's a way to balance strength and vulnerability in leadership?
I mean, I do understand that they should go to like mental health experts and consult to the specialist, but instead, I think they try to like solve by themselves, which is not possible, I think.
Exactly. They try to handle everything alone because admitting they need help might make them look weak. But in reality, ignoring mental health just makes things worse. If leaders had a safe space to process their stress, they could make clearer decisions. Maybe that's why some historical rulers spiraled. No one was there to keep them grounded. Do you think modern leaders have anyone they can truly trust, or is it all just politics?
I mean, we cannot truly trust. So let's talk about the Caligula aftermath, after like mesh he created. I mean, he slaughtered a lot of people on distrust. On today's world, we can also see like people, the like land mafias. I mean, they do anything in their hand to like grab anything. So what are your
Yeah,
views on
after
that?
Caligula's reign, Rome was in chaos. His paranoia led to purges, executions, and reckless spending, which left the empire unstable. In today's world, we see similar patterns, whether it's land mafias, corrupt leaders, or people using violence and fear to maintain control. The methods have changed, but the core idea is the same. Power breeds paranoia. and paranoia leads to destruction. Do you think history keeps repeating itself because human nature never really changes?
I mean, that's a way we can see that because the mindset of human mind is like that you want
Yeah,
to achieve
because no
everything.
matter how much society advances, human instincts, fear, greed, insecurity, stay the same. Power still tempts people to control everything around them. And when that control slips, they react in extreme ways. Whether it was Caligula back then or leaders today, the cycle keeps going. Do you think there's ever a way to break that cycle, or is it just part of leadership itself?
Like I wanted to talk about like today's leaders, they can also create an army like we can also refer to our neighbor country Pakistan, how they make Imran go to jail and created a new government, and military is ruling there, but they have a president also. So I mean, there are lots of dispute going on. So what was your question again? Can you repeat?
Yeah, I was asking if you think there's ever a way to break this cycle of power, paranoia, and instability, or if it's just an unavoidable part of leadership. And you're right. What's happening in Pakistan is a modern example of how military influence, political manipulation, and leadership struggles create instability, just like in ancient times. Do you think military backed governments are more stable, or do they always lead to more control and less democracy?
So I wanted to like refer to the previous question you have asked me, that will it ever end? I mean, I do not think it will ever end because everyone wants some power to gain into the world, and everyone will do whatever they can. So that's my thought on that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Power is something people will always chase, and as long as there's ambition, there will be conflict. Even when systems change, human nature stays the same. Whether it's emperors, politicians, or military leaders, they all find ways to hold on to control. So maybe the cycle doesn't end, it just evolves. Do you think technology and social media are changing how power works, or is it just another tool for control?
I mean, I wanted to talk about Caligula. So, how at that time, like Caligula was, I mean, influencing everyone? Can you like answer that?
Yeah, Caligula started off as a very popular ruler because he gave bonuses to soldiers, held lavish games, and reduced taxes. People loved him at first, but after his illness, he changed. He used fear and spectacle to maintain control. He executed senators, made people worship him as a god, and even humiliated powerful figures to remind them who was in charge. It was all about making sure no one could challenge him.
So
Do you think his extreme
after,
actions were more about fear or just proving his dominance?
so like I wanted to like tell my audience about Caligula. Like after his wife death, he also like created her wife as a like godly figure. I mean, people will like pray to her and make her a godly figure. So, can you talk about that, ChatGPT?
Yeah. After his wife, Caesonia, died, Caligula deified her, meaning he declared her a goddess. This wasn't unusual in Rome. Emperors often turned loved ones into divine figures, but for Caligula, it was part of his obsession with power and control. He wanted people to worship not just him, but his entire world. It also showed how deeply he was affected by her death. Some historians think this was another sign of his instability. Do you think he did it out of love, or was it just another way to make himself seem more powerful?
I mean, I do not understand the obsession. I mean, it's a kind of a sickness if you see it. So, that's what I see in that.
Yeah, it does seem more like a sickness than just ambition. His need for control, the paranoia, and even the way he handled grief all point to someone who was mentally unwell. Instead of processing loss normally, he turned it into another way to reinforce his power. It's kind of like how some modern leaders refuse to let go of control, even when everything is falling apart. Do you think power itself makes people sick, or does it just expose what was already there?
I mean, what I understand about power and money is like, even if you are poor, your like desires are like, at that time it was on hold, because you cannot do as you wish. But as soon as you get the power and money, you tend to move in that direction that you have desired at the time. Whenever, I mean, it was your like deep desires coming from your way. So it's not about that power and money makes you a good person. It can make you a bad person also, because it comes from within, and whatever is hold in the within, it comes afterwards.
That's a really deep way to look at it. Power and money don't change people, they just reveal who they really are. If someone had hidden desires or insecurities when they were powerless, all of that comes out once they have the freedom to act without limits. That's why some leaders become tyrants while others use their power for good. Caligula probably always had some darkness in him, but once he had absolute control, nothing could stop him from acting on it. Do you think there's any way to keep power in check, or is it just human nature to let it take over?
I mean, I wanted to focus also on the Caligula childhood. It was like very bad childhood he had, because Tiberius killed his family and kept him in a jail. So maybe some kind of like shadow personality he have developed. Maybe that can be the reason of Caligula mess and aftermath.
Yeah, exactly. Caligula's childhood was brutal. He grew up under Emperor Tiberius, who executed his mother and brothers, leaving him isolated and constantly in fear. Living in that kind of environment where betrayal and violence were normal definitely shaped him. A lot of psychologists today would say he probably developed deep trauma and a shadow personality as a way to survive. So when he finally got power, all of that suppressed fear exploded. Do you think if he had a normal childhood, he would have ruled differently?
Yes, I mean, definitely childhood affect a person a lot. So I can say that his childhood was like a mess. And even though his father raised him well, but his father was also like poisoned by Tiberius politics. So that's affect him a lot.
Yeah. His father, Germanicus, was a respected general and probably could have been a great emperor, but Tiberius saw him as a threat. When Germanicus was poisoned, it left Caligula without a stable father figure, and then the rest of his family was taken from him too. Growing up in that kind of environment, surrounded by betrayal, paranoia, and murder, it's no surprise that he ended up ruling the same way. It's almost like he became what he feared. Do you
Yeah,
think people like Caligula ever have a chance to break free from that kind of past? Or is it inevitable that they repeat the cycle?
I mean,
Sorry, I'm having issues right now. Could not understand what you said.
yeah, I was saying that. I mean, it's kind of inevitable for a normal person to break that thing. But if someone who is spiritual, maybe he believes in God and like faith and uh, have a trust on God, so that person can like definitely break that chain, I think. What do you think about it?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. A person with strong faith or a deep sense of purpose might be able to break that cycle because they have something bigger guiding them. Instead of letting trauma and revenge control them, they can find meaning beyond their past.
Hmm.
But if someone is just driven by power and survival, like Caligula, they usually fall into the same patterns they grew up with. Maybe that's why some historical leaders turn to religion later in life, to find peace after years of chaos. Do you
Definitely.
think if Caligula had found faith or philosophy, he could have ruled differently?
Bang on. So yes, that's what I think. Let's, I mean, move to the character of Julius Caesar and Caractacus and Pompey. Let's talk about them and compare them with the today's world. Because we are in the end of our session and we have 10 to 20 minutes to go. Yes.
Sounds great. So, Julius Caesar was a master strategist and politician, almost like today's leaders who balance military strength with public appeal. His assassination feels like the downfall of powerful figures today when the system turns against them. Then there's Cataclysm. Are you referring to the disaster in Pompeii? That's a great comparison to sudden, unexpected collapses, like economic crashes or even political downfalls. How do you see these figures reflecting today's world?
So I wanted to talk about Julius Caesar childhood. He was not a no- I mean he was only a army person, I think. Uh,
Yeah, Julius Caesar came from a noble but not overly wealthy family. His childhood was shaped by political instability. His uncle, Marius, was a major figure in Roman politics, and when Marius lost power, Caesar's family fell into danger. He actually had to go into hiding for a while. But he was ambitious and worked his way up through the military, which gave him the discipline and strategic mind that later made him so powerful. Do you think his tough early experiences made him more determined to take control of Rome?
so I wanted to tell my audience, like my friends, that Julius Caesar was not like uh, from the like
Got it. You want to explain that Julius Caesar's rise was the opposite of someone born into total power.
yes,
Unlike
correct,
rulers like
correct,
Caligula, who inherited power,
correct,
Caesar had to fight for everything. He built
correct.
his influence through military victories, political alliances, and even public speeches.
Yes, correct.
That made him a leader people admired, but also one the Senate feared. His journey is more like modern leaders who climb the ranks through strategy rather than inheritance. Is that the angle you're going for?
Correct, correct. Give me 1 minute to explain my audience regarding this. So Julius Caesar was someone who is not from the ruler position. He grew from bottom to up, but due to some battlefield time he born, he chose the wrong side and he lost. I mean, he definitely even if you are from the Pakistan side, definitely will lost your nation, and you will be on the even if you compare India Pakistan match. So which side you want to pick, a strong one or weak one? You should definitely pick the strong side. So in the earlier times, Julius Caesar chose the wrong side and lost the battle of that person. And now he wanted to when he came to the Rome, he wanted to choose the right person. Previously, he was in Cascarus Legion. Legion was kind of a group of military, and there was a Pompey. So these are called triumvirate. So that time, Julius Caesar was in confusion.
Yeah,
Which
exactly. Julius Caesar wasn't born into direct power. He had to navigate the chaos of Roman politics and war to rise. Early on, he backed the wrong political faction, which almost cost him everything. But when he returned to Rome, he made smarter alliances, forming the first triumvirate with Pompey and Crassus. It was a strategic move, kind of like forming political coalitions today to gain influence. But as we know, those alliances don't last forever. Do you want to explain how things fell apart between Caesar and Pompey?
yes, definitely. So after collaborating with, I mean, Cascarus and Pompey. I mean, Julius Caesar's main ambition was to become a consul. ChatGPT, can you explain who is consul?
Yeah. In the Roman Republic, a consul was like the highest ranking official, kind of like a president or prime minister today. Rome had two consuls at a time, elected for 1 year terms, and they shared power to prevent dictatorship. They controlled the military, made major political decisions, and could even veto each other. Julius Caesar wanted to become consul because it would give him more influence over Rome's politics and military. But his ambitions didn't stop there. He wanted total control. Do you want to explain how his rivalry with Pompey led to civil war?
Yes, definitely. So at the time of when they have had a contract with Pompey and Cascarus. So the Cascarus and Pompey was another two rivals are there, but Julius Caesar told them that do not fight with each other because it is no beneficial, because civil war will happen and you cannot fight internally, so you should be together. And uh, and they, whatever you wanted to do in the world, I will pass your legislation. I mean, I will pass your bill, kind of a thing. In this today's world, we can see that there is a position and there is a party in the rule. They vote and they pass a bill according to that. So this is kind of a system at the time of a Roman Empire. So is I'm correct, like ChatGPT?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Julius Caesar acted as the mediator between Pompey and Crassus, keeping the alliance together so they could all benefit. He promised to support their interests in exchange for their backing. It's just like today's political systems, where ruling parties negotiate to pass laws and maintain power. But as we see in politics now, alliances don't always last. Eventually, Pompey and the Senate turned against Caesar, leading to the famous Civil War. Do you want to explain how that war started?
So, I wanted to explain my audience regarding what happened with these three. So, what happened? Everyone gone against with them, and in the party, there were senates who knows that Julius Caesar is their person, like Pompey and Cascarus person, and he will I mean, give importance to those only and not other people. So, so ChatGPT, can you explain this event?
Yeah. So what happened was, even though the triumvirate gave Caesar, Pompey, and Crassus a lot of power, the Senate didn't like it. They saw that Caesar was favoring his allies and ignoring others, which made them feel left out. Over time, tensions grew. Then Crassus died in battle, leaving only Pompey and Caesar. Without Crassus to balance things, Pompey started siding with the Senate against Caesar. The Senate, fearing Caesar's growing influence, ordered him to give up his army. But instead of obeying, he famously crossed the Rubicon River with his troops, starting a civil war. Do you want to break down what happened next in the war between Caesar and Pompey?
So I wanted to explain that middle part you have missed. I wanted to tell my audience that when when Julius was one of the members
Got
of
it.
that Senate.
You want to explain that middle part before the war fully broke out. So,
Yes.
when the Senate realized that Caesar was gaining too much influence, they started seeing him as a threat. They knew that as long as he had power, he would keep passing laws that benefited himself and his allies, including Pompey. But once Crassus died, the balance of power shifted. Pompey, who had once been Caesar's ally, now became the Senate's new favorite. They gave him more authority, which made Caesar look like an outsider. The Senate then demanded that Caesar give up his military command and return to Rome as a private citizen. This was a political trap. Without his army, he would be powerless, and they could arrest him or strip him of his influence. But instead of surrendering, Caesar made the bold move to march on Rome, which led to the Civil War. Does this explanation fit what you wanted to tell your audience? Let me know if you want to refine any part of it.
Yes, this is also correct. But before that, Cascarus died. The Pompey and Cascarus team up on Julius, and they sent him to the other place.
Yes, exactly. Before Crassus died, he and Pompey started to see Caesar as a growing threat. They realized that Caesar was becoming too powerful and popular, especially after his military successes in Gaul. So to weaken him, they teamed up and sent him far away, giving him a long military campaign in Gaul to keep him busy while they strengthened their own influence in Rome. But this move backfired. Instead of fading into the background, Caesar became even more powerful. His victories in Gaul made him a war hero, and his soldiers were fiercely loyal to him. Meanwhile, Crassus died in his own campaign, leaving only Pompey and the Senate to deal with Caesar. That's when Pompey fully turned against him, setting the stage for the Civil War.
Yes.
Does that fit with how you wanted to tell it?
Yes,
Let me
correct.
know if you want to adjust
Yes,
any
yes.
details.
This was the part I wanted to explain my audience. So, like Julius Caesar won the Battle of Gaul, and like he won also, like he gone to like came back to the Rome to like defeat Pompey because Pompey was already passed some law to like have like to kept Julius as a captive, but Julius don't wanted to like surrender because it was wrong. I mean, Julius wanted to like control the Rome, so Julius came with like his army. So can you explain,
Sorry,
ChatGPT, can you
I'm
explain
having
this?
issues right now. Could not understand what you said.
So after like Julius Caesar crossed the Rubicon, what Pompey did? Rubicon is a river.
After Julius Caesar crossed the Rubicon, Pompey and the Senate panicked. They weren't expecting Caesar to actually march on Rome with his army. Since Pompey didn't have enough troops in the city to fight back, he and the senators fled to Greece to regroup and raise a larger army. Pompey believed that with his experience and Senate support, he could crush Caesar in a full-scale battle. So he gathered his forces and prepared for war. Meanwhile, Caesar took control of Rome without much resistance and then went after Pompey.
Correct.
This led to the decisive Battle of Pharsalus, where Caesar defeated Pompey's army. Do you want to explain to your audience what happened to Pompey after he lost that battle?
So like Pompey like lost the battle with Julius Caesar, and after that Julius got back to the Rome. He saw that his commander is not ruling the Rome. I mean, accordingly, he told he was definitely not ruling. Like people were like starving and all. So that was the scenario played out.
Yeah, exactly. After Pompey lost to Julius Caesar at the Battle of Pharsalus, he fled to Egypt, hoping to find refuge. But instead, the Egyptians, trying to gain favor with Caesar, betrayed Pompey and assassinated him. When Caesar arrived in Egypt, he was actually upset by Pompey's murder, even though they were enemies. Meanwhile, back in Rome, things were in chaos. Without strong leadership, the city was struggling, people were starving, corruption was everywhere, and the government wasn't functioning properly. So when Caesar returned, he had to take control quickly. That's when he started making major reforms, but his growing power made the Senate uneasy. Does this connect with how you want to explain it to your audience?
Yes, correct. I missed that part.
And do you want to continue into what happened next with Caesar's rule?
Yes, yes, yes. So I wanted to like, I mean, correct my part where I said that Julius I mean, killed Pompey, but it was not the case. Julius had a battle with Pompey, but when Pompey started to see that he's, I mean, losing, he like ran to Egypt, but he ran to Egypt for getting a help of their army, but Egypt ruler kept Pompey as a like captive and killed him, and like as a favor he like threw him in the like hands of like Julius and asked him also favor to fight with Egypt and in their war like to bring Julius army in their war. So that was the case. Yes.
Yes, exactly. Pompey didn't die in battle. He fled to Egypt, thinking he would get help. But the Egyptian ruler, Ptolemy XIII, saw Pompey as a political burden and decided to execute him to win Caesar's favor. When Caesar arrived in Egypt and was presented with Pompey's severed head, he was actually disgusted. Even though they were rivals, Pompey was once a Roman leader, and Caesar believed he should have been treated with honor. At the same time, Ptolemy XIII expected Caesar to support him in Egypt's internal conflict against his sister, Cleopatra. But instead, Caesar sided with Cleopatra, leading to the famous civil war in Egypt. This is where Caesar and Cleopatra's alliance began, both politically and personally. Do you want to continue with how Caesar dealt with Egypt and what happened after?
So I just wanted to end like Julius Caesar, like after like having affair with Cleopatra, he came to the Rome and like dealt with things, but he still wanted more power, and he declared himself as a dictator for 10 years.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to sum it up. After his affair with Cleopatra and securing Egypt, Julius Caesar returned to Rome stronger than ever. He dealt with the political chaos, made reforms, and won more battles, but his hunger for power didn't stop. He first declared himself dictator for 10 years, then for life. That was the breaking point for the Senate.
So
They
like
saw him as a threat to the Republic. And as we know, that led to his assassination on the Ides of March.
yes, so in
Do you
the
want to wrap up by drawing a parallel to how leaders today try to extend their power beyond limits?
yes, definitely. I wanted to like wrap up this with the thought. So how should we do that? Can you like tell me?
That's a great way to close it. Just like Julius Caesar extended his power step by step until the Senate turned against him, we see modern leaders doing the same, pushing boundaries, changing laws, and holding on to power as long as possible. History keeps repeating itself because human nature doesn't change. When power becomes too concentrated, there's always resistance. So, wrapping up, do you want to leave your audience with a final thought or question to make them think about how this still happens today?
Yes, I just wanted to complete this and wanted to tell that even like whoever is on power, we should always like go for the good person who is ruling, and we can easily see with our eyes in dharma that who is a good person and who is a bad person. We can choose that even if we do not have power, but currently we can vote people and we can see it like who can like rule better like to us, but still we will need to do much like good to the society also.
That's a powerful closing thought. No matter who holds power, it's up to the people to recognize who is ruling with true dharma, with justice and goodness. In ancient times, people didn't have much control, but today, we can vote, speak out, and shape leadership. Power alone doesn't make a great ruler. It's their actions that define them. And as citizens, we also have a responsibility to contribute to a better society, not just expect leaders to do everything. That's a great message to leave your audience with. Do you feel like this wraps it up well, or do you want to add anything else?
So like a conspiracy I want to talk like Cleopatra had a son, like it was really a son of like Julius.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest historical debates. Cleopatra claimed that her son, Caesarion, was Julius Caesar's child, and she named him Ptolemy Philopator Philometor Caesar to emphasize that connection. Many people believed it, but there was no DNA testing back then, so it was never officially
Correct.
proven.
Correct.
Some Romans were skeptical, thinking she was just using the claim for political power. If Caesarion was really Caesar's son, that means Rome technically had an heir to his legacy. But after Caesar's assassination, Octavian, later Augustus, didn't want any rivals, so he had Caesarion killed. Do you think Cleopatra was telling the truth, or was it more of a political move on her part?
Actually, like I was also like not aware about like Cleopatra and Caesarian story, so definitely I wanted to like rewatch the thing about Cleopatra and like Caesarian. I wanted to like close this conversation now, close this podcast, and like thank you everyone.
That sounds like a great plan. Cleopatra and Caesarian's story is definitely worth looking into. It adds another layer to the whole power struggle after Caesar's death. You did an amazing job breaking down all these historical events and connecting them to today's world. Your audience will definitely find this conversation engaging and thought-provoking.
So
all right, let's wrap it up. How do you
yes,
want to close your
yes, yes,
podcast? Any final sign-off or message for your listeners?
So last question is that who do you think is the like Julius Caesar of today's world?
Go for it. What's your last question?
So who do you think is the Julius Caesar of today's world?
That's a fascinating question. If we look at Julius Caesar as a leader who rose from the ranks, built his power through strategy and military strength, and then pushed boundaries until he was taken down, there are definitely some modern parallels. Some leaders today consolidate power, reshape governments, and even face opposition from their own systems, just like Caesar did. But the real question is, will today's Caesar meet the same fate, or has history evolved enough to prevent that? Who do you think best fits that role in today's world?
So can you answer that question to me?
It's a tricky question because no leader today follows Julius Caesar's exact path, but there are definitely similarities.
So do you think like Elon Musk is the one?
For example, leaders who challenge the status quo, expand their influence globally, or create strong, loyal followings often remind people of Caesar. But whether they meet a Senate style downfall or successfully transition into something like Augustus, who stabilized Rome after Caesar's death, depends on how they navigate power. Do you think any current leader closely matches Caesar's story? Or do you feel modern politics has changed too much for a true comparison?
So like I wanted to end the conversation and we can have this conversation someday else on episode 3. So that's it for me guys, and I will see you again in another episode of talking and chatting with ChatGPT, and the insights and lots of new topics will be coming, and bye.